Welcome to the Play-Based Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen R.B. Peterson, and maybe your new teacher bestie that is here to hype you up, maybe give you a motivating kick in the pants, and teach you all I know about play and childhood. I am here to help you challenge old and outdated practices and inspire you to create a truly developmentally appropriate early childhood environment that fosters creativity, curiosity, and joy in the children that you care for. Let's set the stage for a lifelong love of learning. Let's get going. Jesse Coffino is joining me again for the Play-Based Learning Podcast because we just can't get enough of Anji play. And I'm so excited to talk with you because I'm going to China in June, and I want anybody who listens and everyone who listens to come with because I think it's going to be life-changing. And so thank you for joining me, Jesse. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Welcome.
Yeah.
How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me back, Kristen. It's really exciting to have another conversation. I know we get to chat sometimes via email, but face to face, putting a little time into it. Yeah, things are going well. Really excited that you're going to be joining us in China. This work for me that we're going to talk about in a minute started for me because I have a background in China. I speak, I read and write Chinese. I've done a lot of work in sort of the cultural realm. And I happened to be in China and kind of stumble across this place called Anji Play. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the work that we did right after visiting was to get as many people there as possible to see what was
Mm-hmm.
going on. And we're
Mm-hmm.
going to talk about in a minute, like what Anji Play is. Some of you maybe have heard a little bit about it. Um, I think probably the most prominent sort of shorthand for a lot of people is like risk.
Yeah.
But joy and love and reflection and engagement, like all those things are really critical parts as well. Yeah, just getting people out there, bringing educators like you, like your audience and your colleagues, people that are really thinking about what it means to have an approach to education, environments, systems, communities of people that are really centered around like authentically understanding the children in their care, the children in their community. And sort of what are the practical things that like there's some practical, straightforward things that in Anji they figured out how to do on this large scale, sort of systems wide basis that
Mm-hmm.
is transformative for those children, but has also been transformative for the educators that have visited Anji. And we've had educators from all over the world, from the United States, from Europe, from other parts of Asia, from Africa, from South America, sort of like frontline early educators, primary educators, parents, advocates, policymakers, researchers. I think researchers is an interesting word, and we can talk about like what research means in our
I love
context or just in general. But what they saw when they came to Anji, what they described seeing and feeling, the things that I felt that really told me within a very short amount of time that I need to drop everything else I'm doing and focus on helping people understand what's happening there and then
Yeah.
talking about and thinking about what it means to take those things and do them in their context. What really
Yeah.
got me was just the pure joy, the I would say like affective, like like the sense of connection that you felt between children, between adults and children, and really between children and themselves. That sense of both flow and ease, but ease
Mm-hmm.
around challenge, ease around risk, ease around uncertainty, and deep connection. And I think there's a lot that's happening for us as educators, and even if we go beyond education and we look at just where we are culturally, with our young children, with our older children, with our young adults, what does it mean to create an environment that is rigorous about care and learning? But to get to that rigor begins from a place of each child has value in and of themselves that is
Mm-hmm.
worth unconditional acceptance and safety and love. Like when you create a space where each child has a sense of their own value, when systems are informed by that, we really are engaged in something that's going to change the world for the better. Because when we
Mm.
have people who believe in themselves, who trust themselves to that trust that it has value when they pursue things that have meaning to them,
Yeah.
and can grow in systems that both celebrate but seek to understand what has meaning for them. Um, we're really creating a foundation for children that care about learning, but also care about themselves, that care about each other, and
Mm.
that know what it feels like to have an experience of being seen and being
Mm.
heard. I don't want to. I don't want this to go too far into get too far off topic. But I remember once I was thinking about children's literature and seeing these depictions of like happy, healthy, loving families. And I asked a friend who I knew had been through some pretty terrible experience as a child in her family. Whether as a young child, seeing these books made her feel a sense of shame or a sense of like exclusion from a sort of like typical or happy childhood, right? Like, was this sort of an insult? She said, no. What I saw in those books is what family life could be. It made me
Mm.
realize that what I was encountering, what I was having to deal with, was not normal, was
Mm.
not right. She had a reference point. And so I think that if we can create spaces where each child has a reference point for what it
Mm.
means to be unconditionally accepted, for their movements to be seen as having value, as you know, not having to be made to sit still for 30 minutes
Yes.
in a circle time that is irrelevant because this little
Yes.
boy or little girl just wants to run around, right?
Yes.
Like when you have that experience of people that really get you and not only care about what you're doing, but like see the incredible depth and complexity and are humble enough to say, I don't know what that experience necessarily means to you, right? Like, I don't know. In that moment when you're playing, I don't necessarily know what's going on for you while you're playing. Afterwards, when you're talking about it, and you talk about it in ways that are different than the way I have decided to explain the world, that your
Mm.
explanation has more meaning for me in understanding you and perhaps even understanding the world in novel ways. That when a child has that experience, they carry it with them. That doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
And then you know what school can be, you know what you can be. Because at the end of the day,
Mm.
it's about like sort of like each child and each educator and each family and each community having kind of the starting point or the foundation of the resources to really be the best you can be, right? To sort of meet, exceed whatever potential you have. And so I think that that's what I felt when I was in Anji.
Okay.
What I'm pretty sure you're going to feel when you're there, what I hope other people get a chance to
Yeah.
feel by visiting these schools is what does it look like to have a space of 300 children, 400 children, 50 teachers where everyone is kind of like joyously engaged and showing you their potential. And so what it means is
Mm.
you're in spaces where you're feeling ability. And when I've worked with schools, and we can get a little bit more into what Anji Play means, I'd love to show you a video. I always love to start with video reflection.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know how that translates into the podcast, so I know for editing we don't have to do that right
I'll
off the
just,
bat.
right. I'll just sportscast if I need to as we go,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
people can.
And so yeah, so like we've worked with I I think it was the British International School in Budapest where Emma Pickering created an Anji Play early years program to Fidelity that when the
Mm.
big international schools, like the big fancy international school, like what is that, like accreditation service, like an outside sort of like rating service, I think it's called ISS. They came in, and this is a pre-K through high school. So they're there assessing the entire program. That assessor spent most of their time in the early years program because they were just like so amazed by what they were seeing. It was like, oh, like this is what education should be like. Like
Yeah.
this is what high school education, this is what middle.
Yes.
Like they just wanted to stick right there. But what they said and what so many people have said when they visit these programs is these children seemed older than what their grade indicated. Like
Mm.
they
Okay.
seemed older than they were, and so there's like a number of reasons. One, like if you're moving around and physical all day, you're more physically developed. Like your muscles are more developed, you're more balanced, you have more capacity. But then just seeing children like grapple with problems that are age appropriate often looks like children exceeding our expectations because so much of what we expect of and put in front of children is not age appropriate.
Exactly.
I think I'm reminded, there's something called the pickler climber, which is it's kind of like, I
Yep.
don't know if all you,
It's like a
it's like a
triangle with
triangle
like
with
dowels.
wood.
Yeah.
I see that like threes and fours classes when that's like a toddler piece of
Yeah.
equipment, right? So we miss the mark a lot in terms of creating spaces, having expectations that don't allow us to see how truly capable children are. And so to be in a space, as you know, in the spaces you've been in, where you're seeing like really children's ability kind of unleashed. It's like
Yes,
it's a different feeling. It's a feeling.
absolutely. I'm so excited to be able to feel that feeling. I know I'm going to be a changed person when I come back.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And
I'm going to
so
want to
how,
open an Anji Play program somewhere in the United States somehow. I'm sure.
or
I'm going to be like,
or like
let me do
or like
this.
really or just like a better Chinese restaurant. Because I think the other thing that people come back from Anji feeling is like Chinese food is not only so good, but it's so different than what I'm used to.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm excited for that part too. So
Yeah.
do you want to do the video first or do you
Yeah,
want
let's pull
to
up a video. I think
okay,
it's fun to take.
do
And I
that.
guess I'll give a little background, which is that, and we'll talk a little bit more about the history of Anji play. This big
Yes.
shift that happened was that in Anji County, China, in this system of 130 public kindergartens, kindergartens in China, ages 3 to 6, Miss Chung Shui-Chin, who was the sort of superintendent for public early education for the 14,000 children, ages 3 to 6, in these 130 schools, they had national policy coming in the early 2000s saying children should play. It said play should be the primary experience of the child in public kindergartens.
Hmm.
And so Anji, famous for bamboo, really lovely, engaged community. They started making these environments using bamboo, and they started creating all of these like rich and colorful and engaging kind of like I think what we might think of as like stations, like maybe more like sort of the Ecker's kick sort of or
Yeah.
whatever. um, Winning awards. They were like, people were coming, they were taking photos, they were publishing, they were being celebrated for what was thought of as like culturally responsive pedagogy, like using bamboo, all these committees from parents, family involved in making these spaces. But what Miss Chung said is that she went into her classrooms and she saw children smiling with their mouths, but not with their eyes.
Mm.
And I was actually reading a while ago that there was some research done that if you look at like a high school, like they were looking at high school yearbooks, and people
Yeah.
who were smiling with their mouths but not with their eyes had like there was like a statistical correlation between that and later like major depressive episodes. So it's like a real thing. Like not smiling with your eyes is a
Wow.
real thing, but she just keyed in on it just like emotionally. She's like, well, this is something's wrong here. Like my teachers are exhausted, the parents are exhausted, like the system is validating what we're doing, right?
Mhm.
But I, as somebody who's really cares about these children, see that nobody's happy. So she started
Mhm.
reflecting on her own earliest memories of play as a child, her deepest, earliest, most joyous memories of play as a child. She asked the teachers to do that. She asked the principals to do that. She asked like parents and grandparents. It's like, like we all played, right? We're
Yeah.
trying to make play in our schools. So like we should at least start with, however we can locate it in our own experience.
Yeah.
And everybody's memory was different, but there was a lot that was in common. The most common characteristic was agency, freedom,
Hmm.
the child deciding what, with whom, how to play. And then from that, you get like physical risk, you get being outside, you get like sense of time disappearing, you get you get all the other stuff that actually kind of also unify these memories. But the big thing was agency. The big thing was like self determination. So what she told her teachers is like, look, like none of what we've remembered looks anything like what's happening for our children. And so
Hmm.
if we all have this kind of universal understanding of what play is, and that is not at all what's happening, we have to do something different. The first step was just to take a step back, to put your hands down, close your mouth, open your eyes, open your ears, and open your heart to really discover who the child truly was in play. So they just took a step back. Little conflicts, let them deal with it. They want to run around, let them deal with it. There's a whole other story about how, based on that, based on memories and observation and resources, they created environments and materials that kind of like supercharged the play in some sense. They
Yeah.
really supported that play. But the first step was just stepping back. And when they stepped back, they saw children doing things that they didn't realize the children could do. They
Hmm.
started seeing children act in ways that challenge their assumptions about children's intentionality or sense of compassion or fairness. There's that story that somebody else wrote called Lord of the Flies. But then there's been actual experiences. But there's been actual experiences where children have, been shipwrecked essentially and not
Hmm.
turned into chaotic, power hungry, horror movies where they've taken care of each other and
Yes,
listened to each other and protected
yes,
each other and like found roles and kind of figured out how to survive, right? That's what people do. I think
yes.
there's this longer story about how children's incredible survival instinct has led to like challenging emotional dynamics with adults. I mean, that's a whole other thing, right? Like children are
Yeah,
brilliant and they know how to get us to do what they want oftentimes for their own needs. And that's something we have to think about as teachers a lot. But something that was happening for the teachers in Anji is when they stepped back, they saw these incredible children. They realized, A, even with listening, they still didn't know exactly what was happening for young children. I think for them,
okay.
that challenges long held notion that you can somehow watch a child and immediately know where their learning is, what they're thinking, and what exactly to do to bring them to the next place because they were watching intently and not interfering and listening, and they still had lots of questions.
Right.
And to them, it seemed like a fool's errand to try to like constantly respond in the moment with scaffolding when they
Mm.
didn't even know what the children, what was going on for the children to play, right?
Mm.
And so
Mhm.
this is what 2006, 2007, smartphones are out. They start taking videos. They're like, I want to show my colleague over like, can your kids do this? Like, check this out. Like Billy could do this, can Tom do that? But
Yeah.
then they also realized that by watching these videos, they were able to see a different level of meaning, or they were able to reach a greater understanding of what was happening for the children to play. They were left with more questions. They could get the impressions of their colleagues. They could watch those videos again and again, and they could even ask the children to talk about what was happening in those videos.
Yeah.
So, a major practice that developed from this kind of natural response to just pride and excitement about what children were seeing, the sort of practice that developed from an honest acknowledgement that as adults, we don't necessarily know what's happening for a
Yeah.
child, right? And the more we can embrace that, the more we can
Mm.
be A, show that we're present, right? Be present, be valuing the child's experience, but by saying, we don't know what you know, we don't know what you're doing, that is also a really safe and authentic relationship. Like that
Mm.
is a fundamental support of learning because it says that I embrace your uncertainty. I also embrace my own uncertainty. And like the
Yes.
way that you encounter that uncertainty is not by forcing an answer or creating a consensus, but by continuing to listen, by continuing to think, by continuing to discover and explore. Like the end point of taking a risk or exploring or discovery is not stopping.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I did it. Like I jumped off this thing. I'm done jumping for the rest of my life. It's like, okay, how do we make this more complicated? Like, how do we bring in more complexity or more depth? Or how do we ask the next question? And
Right.
so a lot of our teaching is about remembering the answer that we've already decided is the right answer to a question, rather than focusing on both the process of arriving at questions, but then the joy of not knowing the answer. Like, I think the joy of not knowing the answer is something that is very difficult for most educational systems to sit with.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that there's probably people listening saying this is really uncomfortable for me because
Mm,
I want the answers. Like I
yeah.
want the data. I want to know what children are learning when I observe them in play. And with Anji play, it sounds like we need to step outside of that and really just like let go a little bit, a
Yeah.
lot of it.
And I think this comes back to this true, I was sort of saying at the beginning, research is this interesting topic and question. And I think we often hear people say like teacher as researcher, teacher as researcher, child as
Mm-hmm.
researcher,
Yes.
child as scientist. Like these words that sound like good kind of marketing lines, and
Right.
like deep down we know it's true. Like that is what we're
Right.
doing. But if we're going to really embrace that, I mean, there's a huge amount of uncertainty in research. Like
Yeah.
like the scientific method is not I have the answer now I'm going to prove that I'm right. It's I have a theory about something I'm seeing. I'm going to prove myself wrong, and if I don't, my theory is more likely to be right. Um, and that is, I mean, it's an aspect of science we don't think about that much because we
Yeah.
find more comfort in like monocausal, this does this.
Yeah.
Um, but that is how science seeks to arrive at some version of truth. I think it's
Mm.
how human beings in how we learn. Like, fortunately, our ancestors ate all the mushrooms and all the berries, and we know which ones are which, right?
Right.
Right? Like, it's like not as consequential for us to understand the truth of the world around
Yeah.
us in the same
Yeah.
sense. I mean, there are other
Thank you.
consequences,
Thank you to
and
our
there,
ancestors for that.
yeah, yeah. Because like I like the right kind of mushrooms on my pizza.
Same.
I don't like the death pizza. um, yeah, so I mean, I think it's like, all right, if we say, and I think if the history of like educational research, educational theory, philosophy has been about the child being capable, learning being something that's meaningful, but also the fact that like we are in some sense like naturally oriented to learn for our survival as a species.
Mm,
That so much of that learning, as it's always been done, has been about having either the necessity or the comfort and uncertainty to take risks. And we can talk about risky play. I love climbing. My son likes taking physical risks.
mm,
My daughter is an artist and she takes risks with
mm.
her paint and with her
Yeah.
with her
Creativity.
drawings and with sharing that with people, right? So I
Mhm.
think we also want to just push past this notion of risk as just jumping off of things, as great as jumping off of things is. Um,
Right.
so I'm going to show a
It's
video. I know
incredible.
that's a
Yeah.
lot.
There's social risk, there's creative risk, there's physical risk, there's
Yeah.
all sorts of different types of risk. So, I
And I think
think
and I think that we think about sort of a dichotomy or kind of like a distinction between risk and hazard, right? So like
yes.
how are we creating environments that allow for children to kind of push past their bound like their limitations or kind of go up to
Yeah.
the top of their ability. And so I think that in that, right, like in making sure that our materials aren't that they're sturdy, they're not going to break, that there aren't, like a punji pit, like there's not spikes sticking out of the ground where they're jumping, right? There's an aspect of
Right.
safety around that, but there are other
Absolutely.
aspects of safety, like emotional safety, the safety of relationships, the safety of knowing what expectations are that is
Hmm.
necessary for risk. So I remember 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even a little longer, there was a lot of voices where it was encouraging me to take Anji play and really embed ourselves in kind of the risky play movement, which I love to see. But I was seeing a lot of language around like, oh, it's fun to almost like it's fun to neglect our kids, or like danger is good, or there's this kind of romanticization of just the physical part. And it was seeming more and more that like risk and danger and excitement were being equated as a value in and of itself. And so at that moment, I said, I really just want to focus more on this founding principle of Anji love, which
Mm,
is the love of connection, it's the love of care, but it's also the love of creating spaces that respond to children's needs, right? If a young child needs to
yeah.
run around for 2 hours, then giving a child 2 hours to run around is an act of love.
Oh,
But so much of that is about that safety to take whatever that risk is. So I think they're inseparable. I think risk, safety, love, trust, risk are both deeply, deeply connected.
what are, so is there five pillars to Anji
There
play?
are, yeah. Yeah,
Okay. Can you run through those with me?
I can. So we have love, the safety of being seen and heard and trusted, adults that are responsive, that are listening, like a balance of the needs of the individual and the needs of the group, right?
Yeah.
Spaces that attend to each person in that space. When you
Right.
have environments that are characterized by that relationship, and I bring this up because these are five core principles of the approach that emerged from observing children and thinking about what their needs are. But sometimes it can be just as simple as these five principles. Like you can
Right.
go into a staff meeting or into a teaching team meeting and you can think in terms of like, okay, love, like, do we all feel safe to share in this moment? Do we have the resources that we need as educators to support these children? How are we relating to these
Yeah.
children? Like, what are we relating to? Thinking about our practice in those terms. Like, not saying it's just an
Right.
add-on. Like we have our whole mission statement. Then love is one of those things. Again, it's like no, this is the beginning and the end, right?
Yeah.
Love risk. So, like, as we were talking about, when you have the safety of an environment that trusts you, where you're seen and heard, where your needs are being attended to, when you have time and space, because time and space are a need of a child, right? So, having time and space is love, right? The children
Yes.
take risks, and I think of risks as just doing something with it with uncertain outcome based on a prediction, right?
Yes.
And so that could mean jumping off of a ladder. That could mean speaking up in class. That could
Hmm.
mean sharing something with a friend that you haven't told anybody about. Doing something with an uncertain outcome based on a prediction, which is like the basis of the scientific method. It is what
Right.
discovery is about. It is what like real deep learning about, joyous learning is about. Like that's what we
Mm.
do when we go into reading a text as a graduate student or as a college student, right? Like what are the uncertain outcomes in our head and how are we squaring those? Love, risk, joy. Joy can look like a child throwing their arms up and shouting or running around, but it can also look like a child up in a tree quietly by themselves, looking at an ant on the back of a leaf. It can be
Mm.
very quiet, it can be very solitary, it can be very focused, it can be very social, it can be really explosive, it can feel unbounded. But
Yeah.
if we think about love, the safety to sit in uncertainty and to do something, try something, and then joy is kind of this reward for those experiences of risk. We really think of joy as the primary indicator, maybe even the primary measure of learning. I would say for young children, I would challenge us to say that for most people, like deep, meaningful engagement, a sense of accomplishment, engagement. So the fourth idea is engagement, and this is sort of more descriptive. But I would think of it as like the flow state, that sense of connection. We see so much when we watch videos of children playing, or if we just watch children playing, is this almost sort of like wordless coordination, collaboration, where like children seem to know what each other need next, and they can kind of
Mm.
move around each other, and you can see roles shifting. You can see plans and intentions being completed, and you even see like children come in, they have their idea, there's this idea that's going, they somehow manage to like do all three, like they do the group thing, they do each, and there's this kind of almost like wordless, there's this wordless connection. And so I think of engagement as like something that we see when we're deep in it, right? So
Yeah.
engagement is for, and then reflection. And I think
Okay.
reflection does a lot of work. I think with each of these terms, we have sort of definitions that we've thought about and worked over and discussed and that change as we reflect and as we think. These are words. We each have our own definition. We can
Yeah.
each always be revisiting those definitions. So I think the other thing is that, like, you know, we each define love differently. I can think about how love is manifested in an environment that is attending to children's needs and educators' needs. But I think if every day we're coming back to our videos of play, we're talking to our colleagues, we're looking at our environments, and we're updating what we think love is, that's a positive thing. These aren't
Right.
static. Here's this like, here's the Anji commandments, like memorize these three sentences and you'll be good. It's like, well, this is generally what this means. This is what we've experienced. Hold your practice accountable to this definition that we're always working on. But reflection is very it's foundational as an idea. It's also embedded in many practices, or it defines
Yeah.
many practices. So I think in this process, you had teachers that were reflecting on what they had done in the past, right? Like we had been trying to get
Yeah.
the children to play a particular way. The children were miserable, we were miserable, and yet the system was rewarding us. Point of reflection, right? Now we're seeing these
Hmm.
joyously engaged children. We have this incredibly deep understanding of their learning that's based on us seeing them and our decision
Hmm.
making, right? So reflecting on what you're seeing, we don't know what's happening for the children in play. We want to listen more. We want to suspend our judgment. That's a form of reflection. Children coming in and in the Anji play approach, drawing a picture of their play every day, and
Mm.
their teachers writing down the child's word every day. That is the child's engagement and reflection. Children watching the videos that teachers have taken every day and leading their own conversations around those videos. Again,
Mm.
reflection, not brainstorming, not consensus building, like listening to children. In fact, there's a value within the Anji play approach what they call kind of like a clash of ideas, like two children having radically different interpretations of the same experience, or having different explanations for what they're seeing in a video of play is seen both as a positive value, children disagreeing, but is not seen as a moment that requires resolution. So there is
Right.
not within Anji any kind of urgency. In fact, there is a decision not to bring that children's disagreement into a resolution. That
Okay.
there is knowledge that the child will go out the next day and play with the same materials. They're going to come in and talk about it again. And they might have differing interpretations every day of the week about the same play that is different than what we think the explanation is as a teacher. And as a teacher, we don't ever give them the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's acknowledging that the process is critical, that we don't necessarily know, and that
Yeah.
we have to leave space for like the emergence of novel and new explanations. So reflection is something that teachers engage in as teaching teams. So we're going to watch a video in a second,
Yeah.
right? So reflection is something that is part of the embedded cycles of professional development, the day to day. When I work with programs in the United States where teachers don't have 2 hours every day to meet in their teaching team because they have a quality carrier that's watching 6-year-olds nap for 2 hours because hey, in China they actually understand that 6-year-olds are young children and
Yes.
young children need to sleep, right?
Yes, they
Like,
do.
and they've been doing all this stuff, so they've got time to reflect. That in programs in the United States where teachers don't have that time,
No.
insofar as they can, they're watching videos with each other at lunch or they're showing them to parents during pickup and drop off. It's like, how are they integrating that reflective stance into those spaces of agency that they have in their schedule?
Right.
And then they're deeper and deeper form. Like we could go on sort of all the recursive or sort of ecologically sort of enmeshed forms of reflection that are part of the system. But what's really critical about this piece of reflection is that every time I visit Anji, and when you visit Anji, you're going to see things that I haven't seen. That practices change,
Yeah.
environments change, right? Like schedules change. It is not this is the way it was laid down. Happens in this way. Like you are just implementing somebody else's idea. That
Yeah.
agency, that sense of love and embracing uncertainty means that reflection supports the continued redefinition of love. It
Right.
supports the continued creation of environments that allow children to take risks, that experience joy and feel that deep sense of engagement.
Mm.
So I think reflection is like that key piece that differentiates this approach from many, many other approaches.
Right.
I think there is fundamentally a difference between saying, learn from this incredible educator or be this incredible educator.
Mm.
And I think that how we think about the learning of teachers is also how teachers then think about the learning of children. So if we are
Mm-hmm.
creating safety for teachers to become deeply and meaningfully engaged in taking risks and then reflecting, that is going to create more of a understanding, but also really feeling the value of what it means to be in a space like that.
Oh my gosh. You just like listening to you speak about childhood, it just makes my heart so happy because we need more of that in our world. We need more adults who like think childhood is sacred and
Yeah.
are
Well,
teaching others about that. So thank you.
yeah, well, and I think, something that's interesting about this moment we're in right now, because you're an online person, you're pretty aware of like what parents and educators from sort of different generations are
Yeah.
contending with. I think there is an emerging understanding, and there's even like a nostalgia for a version of childhood where children had freedom, where they were running around. Like, you see these memes about like drinking from the water, or like drinking from the hose, or like
Yeah.
not coming back until late, or like like the late Gen X, like millennial childhood is
Yeah.
being something that is desired by Gen Alpha or Gen Z because there's like freedom, they're outside, they're not in front of a screen, like their parents aren't on top of
Yeah.
them, they don't have all this anxiety. And so I think there is an emerging understanding that we have really in the last probably 20 years cut off like this point of access to what childhood has always been in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah.
children being children, adults being adults, and children going off and like figuring things out and making relationships with friends and like overcoming challenge and learning about themselves and deciding what they want to do with their lives and like seeing where they have value in
Yeah.
these systems, right? Like really
Right.
identifying and then spending time with the things that are about them that have value rather than their value coming from like their ability to repeat something else or their behavior being about being occupied with some sort of feedback loop of technology so that the adult doesn't have to take responsibility for like the messiness of being a young human being as it
Yeah.
can be, that there is a growing understanding that that's what children need and that's what children for a long time have had. And so I think what's very interesting about what happened in Anji, about this approach, is that it says yes and. So it's not the adults are bad, like just get adults out of the way. We just need more latchkey kids, or like we just need to like let children roam freely. Although in some sense that's better than what we're currently doing. But saying like, no,
Right.
we have schools. Like we have schools, we are teachers, we care about children's safety, we care about their learning, we have resources to put into creating environments. We can hold accepted wisdom and research about what children need and how they learn accountable
Yes.
to the environments and the spaces that we can create. And so I guess the one other caveat I'd say, the one other thing that I'd say before we jump into this video, is when Miss Chung first told the teachers in her county to step back, A, she took on responsibility for communicating to parents. She took on responsibility for the safety of the children. She, A, provided safety for them to engage in that work, right? Like, I've
Right.
got you. This is coming from me. I'll handle all the incoming. But there's also safety that comes from having space to think and understand on your own terms without
Yeah.
feeling judged or told that you're wrong. And so they stopped receiving any kind of outside professional development from like the county, from the
Mm.
province, from like all these visiting experts that their careers are based on, going from the provincial
Yeah.
university to the schools and training. And like in China in particular, like the status of being a professor, there's a lot of power and influence and like a like top down hierarchical view of knowledge that is part of like all academic systems. They
Yes.
said 2 years, nobody's coming in. We are understanding these children. We
Mm.
have the ability to make our decisions based on what we know and we can see. So not only over this 2 years, they developed this incredibly rich vocabulary, deep understanding, expertise on children, like the ability to
Wow.
talk about children's abilities in ways that, I mean, they're some of the most articulate teachers I've ever met.
It's
But they
beautiful.
weren't subject to the power dynamics of sort of like authority and I'm the expert and you're the vessel or you're not capable or just do this new thing that I've thought up that my research or my funding has told me is right. And then the wild thing, what happened was once after that 2 years came out, finished, you had experts come in, they would give a talk, and these teachers and Anji would be like, well, but like, Mike, look at this video, right? Like, what you're saying is wrong, right? Like, you don't, like, you are not providing an accurate description of child ability. You're not providing an accurate description of what it means to teach. You're not even providing an accurate description of what play is.
Wow.
So, yeah. And there's larger stories about how this became controversial as Anji Play has scaled throughout China, where now you
Yeah.
have just teachers at random professional development throughout the provinces confronting the top experts from that province, right?
Oh my goodness, I love this.
So empowerment and reclaiming expertise and just safety at all levels
Yeah,
to sit in uncertainty and then in that develop a much richer, much more useful understanding of what's actually going on.
absolutely.
All right, so I'm
Mm.
going to show you a video.
Okay.
And while you're watching this, towards the end, I want you to think about the interaction she's having with those boys that come in.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, two children, they're outside. There's like a tile wall, and the wall, there's a lot of paint on it from children. And on the wall, adhered somehow are lids to little, like, must be like yogurt containers or like gelato containers or
Your
something like
paint
that.
jars, even. I think
Just
maybe it's even like
jars.
little paint jars, just
Okay.
jar lids.
Okay. So it's the lids are somehow adhered to the wall. And there's some that like are stuck there and they don't go anywhere. But then there's a couple lids that keep, so the children try to stick them to the wall, but then they slide down. And so then they take the lid from the ground, walk over to a table, which looks like it has water spilled on the surface of the table. I didn't see that before. And they put the lid down on the table to get some water on the lid, and then they take it back over to the wall and try to stick it to the wall with using the water as an adhesive almost. And sometimes it'll stick for a little bit, and then sometimes it'll fall, and then you do it again. And then then there was a bigger container, the actual container part, not the lid. And they tried to get the actual container to stick to the wall by using the water as an adhesive. That one didn't work. So then they went back to the lids and just were going back and forth from the table with the water on it, putting the lids on the walls, trying to get them to stick, sometimes sticking, sometimes not. And then some other children came over to check out their play to see what they were doing. And there was a little bit of like, I couldn't understand what they were saying, but there was a little bit of like, hey, maybe this, I'm doing this, get out of my way type of thing. And then you see a teacher just kind of gently embracing one of the children that was standing there. Um, and then, oh, I loved the technique of they're finding different techniques of like how to get the water on, like maybe if this is what I'm telling myself this little girl is thinking, which she's probably not, but maybe if I pound on it, it'll get more water on it and it'll stick better. So she's like holding it down on the table and then using her fist to pound on the top of the lid, thinking maybe that strategy will work better than just like swirling it in the water. So she tries that a few times. Um, and then at the very end, there's a little one who takes some purple paint. I love that. Just like paints on a chair outside.
So after watching that, what questions would you have? Like, what are the things that you want to know?
So my questions would probably be different than like a teacher who is in a traditional
Yeah.
program. So I think about my work with educators who are in those traditional spaces who don't have any sort of ideas about how learning looks, what it looks like in play. And so their questions might be different than mine. So I'm going to ask one of their questions to
Oh, yeah,
you, if
that
that's
sounds
all
great.
right.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think one of their questions would be, well, what are they learning?
Yeah, yeah, that's
How
a
can
great
you tell
question.
what they're learning? So I think that that's what a lot of educators would be thinking. My question, and strictly because I'm starting to learn more about the reflection piece and listening to you speak about how we don't know what they're
Yeah.
learning. Like,
Or how, maybe the question I'd ask back is how do we figure out what they're learning?
yes,
How would you figure out how to imagine you or you're a teacher?
how would I figure out what they're learning? I would ask them.
Okay.
What if they don't have the words to tell me?
When would you ask them?
I don't know. I honestly don't know if it's best to ask in the moment. You don't want to
Yeah.
interrupt it. Like I'm
Right.
a huge,
What would you interact? What would you, when, how, and what would you ask them? So first is the when.
I think when would be after the play is done and they're
Okay.
removed from it.
First,
Okay.
let them finish whatever they're doing. Let
Yeah.
them continue in what they're doing.
Yes.
Like, let's assume something is being learned. So let's let that process of learning
Yes.
complete itself. All right.
Yes. Yes.
When sometimes
Absolutely.
after.
I don't want to interrupt it. So that's the when.
So then the
How? Okay.
how.
So then what's the next question?
How are we asking them?
How am I asking? I would ask them either with it might be how maybe a question of how did you feel or
Okay.
um how uh, one of the questions that I ask like my son every night, one of my children before he goes to bed is like, what's one thing that made you really happy today? Or what's something that you felt really proud of today? I always go leave him at bed with a question like that. So maybe there's a way to ask in that sort of way, like, what brought you joy today? Um, and maybe it's drawing pictures, like having the children draw a picture for me of their experience, if
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
easier for them than words or telling a
So
story
continue,
about
like, so
it.
continuing their engagement with that experience, like outside of play, but giving them an opportunity to
Yeah.
sort of, um, sort of
Tell us,
organize or
yeah,
reflect on or process what they've just done.
absolutely. Tell a story on how you like what you were in that moment. I saw you
Yeah,
playing
great.
this. Tell me a story about that. And the interest, like I'm coming at this blindly. Like I do not
Yeah,
know Anji Play's documentation process
yeah,
or reflection process. So I don't even know if what I'm saying lines up with the reflection piece of
yeah,
Anji's philosophy.
yeah. Okay, so then, so we got the what, the how. So we're kind
Yeah.
of there. We got the when, the what, the how. After play, sort of open-ended questions that maybe key in on feelings, using different forms for the child to kind of like extend or continue what they
Yes.
were thinking about. Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds right to me. I think if we think about what might happen with a video like this or an Anji Play program, yeah, children would come in. They would have that daily, again, consistency is really important for children's safety, like knowing what to expect, minimizing transitions, right?
Yes.
They would have a
Yes.
lot longer to play. They would come back in. They would have an opportunity to draw a picture of what they were doing in play, and then to
Yes.
have the teacher write that down. So they're turning their experience into, they're organizing it, they're sharing their story. It's possible that what they talk about or what they draw is different than what we just saw. It might be a
Yeah.
different part of their play. And so that tells us, okay, what learning is the most critical for them at that moment, right? So there's things that
Mm,
we're
yeah.
interested in. What is the child really contending with? How are we meeting the child where they are in terms of their learning? And if we think about the zone of proximal development, like the child tells us what is most important to them is the thing that they're probably the closest to getting to next in, right?
Mm,
All right, so children are now drawing a picture. We have a clear sense of what's important to them and to the group. Um, then we can take this video. We can bring a video and share it with the children where the questions are more open-ended. What did you discover?
mm,
Oh, I see you're playing with these. What was going on? Who wants to share about what they're seeing here? What were you doing? A child gets up. Does anybody else have thoughts about that? Do you agree with that? Could
mm.
everybody hear what she said? Oh, can you step forward and say it a little more slowly, right? So questions that scaffold and support around practices of listening and sharing rather than the thought processes. So it's not, oh, you described the lid falling off. Can you think of other situations where something fell off? The teacher wouldn't do that in an Anji Play program. They might say, did everyone hear that? Does anyone have any other ideas? Or
Mm.
who agrees with that? Oh, show of hands. Oh, you don't agree? Come up and tell us about that. Did everybody hear that? What do you think about that? So, listening, sharing, clarity, and then holding those ideas accountable to other people's interpretations and making it safe for everybody to have those feelings. And, it's possible to do that and they never talk about the lids. Or it's possible they talk
Right.
about that and they go through 20 different explanations of the lids and they still don't have an explanation. And so I think that's the important thing is, and so we can look at this video, we can look at it from the perspective of practice, right? So what is that teacher doing in that moment? In that video, I think you saw like they were recording at the same time. The camera was kind of at their kind of like chest height, so they were making eye contact. There was clear responsiveness, like clear engagement. Like you
Yeah,
could see a teacher that cared about what's going on, that was maintaining,
absolutely.
supervisory ratios, who was really interested in what the children are doing, but was still there to respond to other children that
Yeah.
came in. Right? We can talk about that stance, right? That again, these things are not binaries. It's not like you observe and then you become this kind of like cold, like blue steel, like I'm not talking to you, go away. Like it's still
Mm.
warmth. You're not disappearing, but you're not stepping in lightly. You're not asking those questions. You're not sport casting while the child is doing that. You're not making
Yeah.
assumptions about what exactly is happening. I think we could look at this video and say, okay, like let's look at this video and let's talk about the learning that we see. Like you and I and five other stellar traditional teachers are looking at this. What math is going on? What science is going on? Physics is going
Hmm.
on? What self-regulation is going on? What kind of dramatic play might be happening here? Like, what are we seeing? What could be happening here? I think then, we can always watch this and hold ourselves accountable to like, all right, like brass tacks. What what are the factors that influence that lid sticking on the wall? I mean, think
Mm.
about it. What are like let's make a list right now. Like what are the factors that determine whether or not a lid sticks on the wall off the
I
top of
mean,
your head?
physics
Okay, but that's a
is a
broad
huge
category.
one.
Let's like what like so what are like what like let's think no, but seriously, like what are the different things that will determine whether or not that lid sticks to that wall?
Like how heavy it is,
How heavy it is?
the shape of it, how much water
Yeah.
is on it, what's on the surface of the wall already, what's not on the surface of the wall already, um, how fast you get it there from the water to the wall,
Yeah.
what else is around it on the wall, the material the lid is made out of,
Yeah.
the material the wall is made out of, if I didn't say that already.
Like the consistency of whatever that liquid is that's on there.
Yeah.
It could be also the force, like if you're pushing air out, the force that you hit the wall.
Yes.
External factors like temperature, humidity.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so think about that. That's a lot of complex factors that influence that.
Yes.
And so to say, like, I just want to focus on the fact that you're making a straight line or you're patterning, right, might be showing children that we're at a much simpler level of exploration than they are, right? Like, if the children already got the A B patterning, like talking about it for days is going to show that as teachers, we are less interested in the things that interest them, things that may be
Yeah.
much more complex, and that we as adults don't necessarily have answers to. Like, I don't know at the end of the day what the one thing is that's going to stick it to the wall. But if for a
Right.
week, every day they're talking about it and drawing pictures of it and experimenting and they're finding differences, like they are arriving at an explanation of what they are observing. And whether or not that explanation is quote unquote right, like a child who's deeply engaged in that process is engaged in really meaningful types of learning, right? And that's
Yeah.
something that, again, you don't lose that. Like that's
Yes.
what you're building right now. I think that there's also this interesting part of this video where these two boys come in, right? And like it's like so like part of criticism, but a question we get a lot is like, okay, like you're taking video. How do you make sure you get a video of every child every day doing everything? It's like we don't, right? Like you have these children for 3 years. Like you're always like children like at some point, like every child's gonna get to talk about their play, right?
Yes.
And oftentimes you'll take a video of children's play, you don't realize that five other children were involved. When you actually
Yes.
listen, you find out that your assumptions about who is in that play are wrong, right? So I think what you're seeing here is a teacher is interested in what these children are doing. You have two boys that come in that like, hey, they went on the action. Like again, recording and being present for play communicates that what's happening in play is important. Again, a sign of love. As an adult, I'm saying not only is play important, but what you're doing in play is important to me. So important that I'm going to like be quiet and like get on your
Mm.
level and like use the most important thing in everyone's life, the cell phone, to understand you actively, right? Like here's this thing, you're
Mm.
taking this thing and it's like not only is this thing about you capturing something, but it's about you being quiet and focused. It's about
Yeah.
you creating a record of something valuable. um, it's about me later understanding myself, like what you're taking there, I know what you're going to do with it, like we're going to look at it again and I'll be able
Yeah.
to think about that, right? So it's changing that relationship to technology. It's showing that the teacher, the educator, is focused on like an authentic relationship of understanding. But then it's like, that's a relationship, right? Children like those boys are like, hey, like, I mean, who knows? But it's like, we want to be in the video. Like, what do they know? It's kind of interesting. They don't want us to be part of it. Teacher's there. We love the teacher. We want to get in on the action. And I think what you see there is that she is not in. There is not that pressure of I have to get everybody. I have to take X amount of video. It's not like, oh, like why are you interrupting me? There isn't that freeze of like you're interrupting my important practice,
Yeah.
right? It's like come take a look. Like oh, be a part of this with me,
Yeah.
right? Like see what I'm doing. Oh, you don't like. There's a closeness. There's a relaxation. But then the child pulls away. Like the child goes in front and dances in front of her, and she doesn't say stop. I'm looking at something more
Yeah.
important because a child's need is important. Maybe right after that, she put down her video and she stopped recording. She
Yeah.
didn't have to get the end of that play. Like the practice of recording was not more important than the stance and relationship of being responsive to the children in your care. And I bring this up because I think there can be a perception that observation, that
Yeah.
taking video is both bringing technology in a way that interrupts an authentic relationship or that makes people dependent on this technology. I think what you're seeing there's a very fluid relationships based empowering use of technology.
Yes.
But also when you're using that, you are not neglecting other children's needs and you're not sacrificing everything to force yourself to produce a certain amount of footage. But what I
Yeah.
would also say is this video is a bit meta and it ties back to our study tours is that you're seeing adults in that space from Bangladesh, from America that were on a study tour. I was taking that video because I was leading a study tour and I
Okay.
actually focused, I shifted my focus away from that teacher onto the child in the chair because I could see that she was surrounded by foreign observers and she was interacting with a child in a way that maybe was a little more challenging because she had to think about how she was balancing that. And I knew that my camera was a form of, if not
Yes.
pressure, like visibility that I thought, I want you to have your space and not worry about how I'm perceiving how you are responding to this moment.
Yeah.
So I think there's also that piece of sort of my role as an observer, using these videos now for reflection and thinking about teacher
Yes.
practice and the power that we hold in
Yes.
being present and in reflecting. And so, what I would say is that based on taking videos, creating environments like you just saw, embracing like a really radical commitment to the value of uncertainty in the process of learning, that that relationship of safety always comes first. That awareness of of needs and abilities sort of defines the systems that we create.
Yeah.
And so that when we are taking video, when I work with teachers, I say this is not about surveillance. Like you don't pull out your camera and record something that you don't want a child to do, right? Because I've seen that
Yeah.
happen. Where it's like, oh, they're fighting, so I'm gonna take out, or like, oh, they're running around, so I'm gonna take out my camera so they know that I'm watching them. You don't
Mm.
bring in video to teach a lesson. Like you don't
No.
take a video of sharing and come into the classroom and say, like, look at this amazing instance of sharing. Let's all talk about it.
Yes.
Because, and we can talk about how our attitudes towards materials influence how children engage with materials. But if the practice of recording is about teaching a lesson or stopping a behavior, then it is not safe. I guess that's what I'm
No.
coming back to.
Right.
It's not about every child's ability. This is about rewarding one adult interpretation of ability, or this is about preventing one adult interpretation of bad behavior, right? So
Yeah.
we have to be very intentional about how we use these types of practices because it's very natural and it can be very easy for it to slip into the teachable moments and preventing stuff that we don't want to see. Because whenever we get like a tool in our toolkit or a technique that leads to a quick, what we think of as kind of like reliable fix, it's easy to
Yeah.
just kind of fall into that and not question the potential impacts that it has on relationships
Absolutely.
or other ideas.
Okay, so for the study tour coming up in June, June
June
13th
13th
through
through
18th,
18th, yeah.
what what should I expect?
What you should expect. Somebody will meet you at the airport. It'll probably be
Okay.
me or Aaron. The airport's about 3 hours outside of
Oh, you're
Anji,
gonna
so
be there.
morning
Are you
to
gonna be there?
Shanghai. I'll be there. Yeah, yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
I get to meet you in person.
I'm the interpreter. You're
Oh,
gonna
you
be here.
are.
Yep, yep. I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah. So Aaron and I will meet you. We'll probably get a snack for you depending on when your flight arrives. We'll get into sort of like a van with other educators from around the world. We got people from Germany. We got people from all over the place joining
Amazing.
us on this trip. Um, we will drive to Anji. We'll check into the wonderful hotel. I think we've scheduled it so people arrive on Saturday. On Sunday, we have a day to kind of settle in,
Yeah.
tour the town a little bit. We'll meet, we'll reflect, we'll talk. I'm sure Miss Chung will come spend some time with us.
Right.
We'll have some good meals. Anji is famous
Right.
for bamboo production, white tea production. It's a green, beautiful place to be. We'll
Amazing.
gather, we'll have dinner, we'll talk about the next day, and then we'll really spend the next 3 days waking up every morning, having the wonderful breakfast there, visiting a school, spending time observing children and teachers, watching children transition, watching their reflection, watching their,
Mm,
their transitioning through the day.
yeah.
We'll be meeting with teachers after, during lunch, meeting with parents and administrators, and it's really focused on an immersive experience, like just being in these schools. We
Yes.
have incredible access, so it's not a lot of pre-planned activities. It's not a lot of lectures and PowerPoints. It's focused almost entirely on connecting with each other as educators while we connect with these incredible practices and environments and
Mm,
educators in Anji County. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So we had
And
three
we've done
days.
we've done these study tours. Yeah, we've done these study tours. This is going to be probably like 12th or 13th study tour I've done to Anji. They just continue to
Okay.
develop and evolve as we've done. So I think we've got something pretty pretty good
Amazing.
for everyone. Pretty.
Okay, how long will we spend at the schools each day and how many schools will we see?
Yeah, I'm working on the itinerary right now.
Okay.
Generally, we'll get to the schools around 8:30. We might visit one school in the morning, like say like 8:30 till noon, have lunch there. Then during nap time, we'll be in a van. We can sort of
Okay.
unload, like, kind of like unpack. Then maybe
Yep.
from like 2 to 4:30 being in the next school. Then probably going out and having dinner with the teaching staff from that school and talking about it over hot pot or over whatever we're
Mhm.
doing, and then kind of repeating that the next day. So it could be as many as five schools. It could be as few as three, um, from 8:30 to 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. We're going to be in schools. Um,
Amazing. Will there be any sort of instruction or tips on just how to interact or not interact, or maybe just cultural manners that we will need to be aware of as people coming in from different countries who've never been to China before and don't
yeah,
want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but also want people to know that we're super grateful to be there. Is there
yeah.
going to be any sort of like
We sent out an email in advance with sort of like
okay.
some, the tips for that. Um, as you saw in that video, like I was the Western dude taking a video. We
Yeah.
saw people in the background from different places. Um, because I think in part because both the children and the teachers have such a sense of ownership and sort of like that space is theirs.
Yeah.
I have seen very little disruption from our presence in terms of like the children and the teachers. Like I've visited other well-known schools around the world where it's like the children immediately focused on me because what they're
Yeah.
doing in their class is less interesting than me.
Yeah.
I've been to rural schools in Anji County where foreigners are not that common, where their play is still more interesting than me. So I think that one of the really incredible outcomes of having these spaces is it's harder for us to interrupt what's happening
Yeah.
because it's like so good and they're so at it and like they're proud
Mhm.
to share with us. And particularly if we approach those spaces with humbleness and a desire to observe, we're already doing the thing that they do. So we
Yeah.
fit in, right? Like we're just part of what's happening there. China, despite its long, long history of like a very rich and consistent culture over thousands of years, or maybe because of that, is really, I've always found very open to and interested in other people's experiences and
Mhm.
perspectives. So I've always felt very welcomed. I've always
Good.
seen other educators being very welcomed, both in Anji County, but just in China generally. Like it's a really
Yeah.
safe place, but people are really like kind and welcoming and are curious.
Mm.
I've never heard Miss Chung, who is the brilliant mind behind and the power behind all of this. I have never not heard her ask a visiting educator, "Oh, what could we do better? What could we do different? What do you think about this?" That there's a humbleness and a gratitude towards diverse perspectives on their work. So
Mhm.
it is not necessary to come in and defer and worship at the feet of Anji play. Of course, don't be a butthead, like don't be rude, don't come in there and say that it's like this is awful, but like there is a authentic commitment to hearing and valuing diverse perspectives. So
Absolutely.
I think not feeling that you have to toe a party line, or you have to somehow get it right, or you have to understand this, or you have to know it all, or like you have to know the secret words of Anji play to engage deeply. Like the more authentically and honestly you're engaging with what you're thinking and feeling and seeing, the better it is. I mean, that's what this
Yeah.
is all about. This is a not like this is specifically an approach that's not about the fancy words. That's not
Mm.
about knowing it all. That's not about knowing more than other people. That's not
I
about
love that.
being like the smartest person in the room. It's about
Mm.
being like honestly, it's like the more directly and honestly you talk about what you're seeing, it's like that's what garners respect, right?
Yeah,
And part of that is creating an environment where it's safe enough to be able to share that.
absolutely. So, if there's any educators out there who are listening to this and like, wow, this sounds amazing, but they've never been outside of their country before or never
Yeah.
traveled, like one of my flights will be 15 hours to get there. What what do you want to say to those people? If they're feeling like I really want to come, but I'm a little scared because it's giving me a little bit of like,
Yeah.
so China, like I've never been to China. I've been to South Africa, that's the furthest away I've been, and Australia. But they're English speaking countries. So to
Yeah.
go to a country that isn't English speaking feels very scary for me, but
Yes.
I'm taking a risk and
Yes.
something I've been wanting to do for many years. And I know because of the way that things are set up, I'm going to be taken care of when I'm there. So there's
Yeah.
nothing really to be scared of for me, really. What would you say to people? Like, what do you want to tell people? Like, if they're on the fence of should I go or should I not go?
I would say the North Star, the core commitment in our work is safety, it's love. It is
Mm,
intentionally understanding needs to create the safety so that children, educators, communities, families can take risks, the safety to take risks, to hold a place of uncertainty so that you can have deep experiences of joy and engagement, and to reflect on those experiences. And so that's what all of our work is about. But in particular, when we're creating reflective spaces, it's how do we feel safe enough to reflect. When we are creating opportunities like the study tour, it is how do you feel assured and safe? How do you feel love from this program to take that risk? And that first risk is getting on that airplane, is
yeah.
going to an unknown place. And so we're just always here to respond to people's questions. We've thought about this. We've worked
Mhm.
with hundreds of educators. We've we've never lost anyone, and honestly, we've never not gotten a visa, which is pretty amazing. But we're
Good.
there with you every. We will be there with you every step of the way before you get on the plane, and we'll be
Yes.
there pretty much your first step off the airplane. Like
Amazing.
you are not leaving the airport without seeing me or Aaron, and you'll know
I
what we
love
look like.
that.
You'll hear our voice. You'll
Yes.
have our contact information
And I,
before you get on that airplane.
right. And I love that, like, I already, like, Aaron was already like, give me all of your information so that I can get the visa started for
Yeah,
you. So,
yeah,
like, I wouldn't even have known that piece that I need a
yeah,
visa to go
yeah,
anywhere. So,
yeah,
that was very helpful.
yeah. So we are here to make sure that any question is answered, that needs are understood and responded to, and yeah, that we're a part of it from start to finish. So you're not going to show up and it's going to be like some random representative or somebody doesn't speak English, or you're
Yeah.
supposed to follow some little map on a piece of paper and show up somewhere and nobody shows up and you're in China. It's like we will be there waiting for you.
Well,
We will
and
be there waiting
well,
for you.
yeah, and if anybody's coming who's listening to this who decides they want to come along, I
Yeah.
mean, if you need to get on the same airplane as me somehow, so that you know that there's at least one other person coming to the same place, like you can reach out to me
Yeah, like
and
tell us
on the
what you're
same.
thinking. Tell us what you need.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
tell us what you're thinking. Tell us what you need. Tell us what you're nervous about. And yeah, the more comfortable you feel to share the things that are making you uncomfortable, the more we can address those.
absolutely.
And
I think that this is going to be such a life-changing experience just in my, like me personally, internally. as a human as well as an educator. And I am so excited for that. So thank you for this opportunity to be able to do this. I've
Absolutely.
been
I'm really excited.
waiting for so long for it. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. Thank you for taking the time to let us
Yeah.
into your world a little bit and to let us into the children's world in Anji County. And we're going to do a follow-up episode
Cool.
after I get back from Anji County. And that'll happen. You'll hear a follow-up episode probably at the end of June, beginning of
Yeah,
July.
and I encourage people to check out anjiplay.co. Resources you can find about the study play there. We also do like drop-in video reflection sessions, which I encourage people to
Mm.
check out. We have
Ooh,
some on-demand courses where you can
yes.
learn about reflection, observation practices, how to take those videos of play, how to think about materials and environments. And we also do work with schools and programs. So
Yeah.
don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to share what we know and what we don't know.
Yeah.
And then think about how the work that we do can be a part of the work that you do. Um,
Amazing.
we're here for it.
I do have one more question, and now
Please.
it went out of my brain. I
Can I
don't
share
remember.
one more video with you? I'm going to send you a link.
Please. Yes. Oh, I know what my
That's kind
question
of
is.
my. Yeah, please, please.
While you're getting that video link, is it better to come in to this experience not knowing much, or should I be going on Anji's website and taking some of those classes before I come?
I think they're both good. I mean, like,
Okay.
I know that's not a very like satisfying so, sort of answer. Like, I think it can be really great to go to a space without that background and kind of figure it out on your own. Like, it can
Yeah.
also be nice to have background so you can like ask sort of like the deeper questions maybe, or
Okay.
like kind of go a little deeper. So I think it's sort of like, what is your style of learning?
Okay. So,
What
and for
like
anybody else, if this is the first time you're hearing about Anji Play, that's good for you to know as well that you don't have to know anything and you can
yeah,
come.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I would say that like if you were somebody that you really need that to feel like deeply engaged and to feel safe, like do that thing that is
Yeah,
going to make it better for you. If you like the
absolutely.
surprise, that could be great too. Like I didn't know what to expect when I first went to Anji, and it allowed me to
It changed
engage
your
with it
life.
in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely did. And it also just allowed me to engage with it in a way that didn't have as much like research behind it,
Yeah.
right? Okay, I'm going to send you a link. Oh
And
shoot. And this is purely my selfish desire to talk about videos of play.
okay.
And
Okay.
then this one, there should be like a little like closed caption button that you can push so you can see what's being said.
Okay.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
All
Yeah,
right.
I was
A lot going
not.
on.
I
Yeah, yeah, I was not.
love, is it Yaya? Their
Yeah.
face, like they're just standing there with a little watering can, like, I
So
don't
okay,
want anything
corral.
to do you. I'm just gonna stand here and stare at you while you figure out your problem here.
Yeah.
That was
There's a
good.
lot to talk about in that video.
Yes.
And we don't have to jump into it. I'd love to talk to you again and get your thoughts on it.
Okay.
Um, I'll give you what first impressions. Like what like in
Okay.
top line, what did you see? What are you thinking?
Okay. First impressions are that's exactly how I go about problem solving with the children that I work with when I was in the classroom. That so there was a little boy who was very upset that at least looked upset that they couldn't have the little watering can that Yaya had.
Mhm.
And Yaya, if that's how you pronounce it, that's what I heard.
Yow
The
yow,
child,
yow 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 yow.
yeah. Um, Yaya was like standing there almost like what I would describe as a deer in the headlights, like
Yeah, that's right.
holding the watering can, waiting for this other child to stop or do something. Like they almost look like they were waiting for something to happen that they didn't want to happen. And then eventually, so the teacher is trying to console and do some problem solving with the child who really wants the watering can, saying that there's other better things that you could use with water. There's a lot of tools that you can use with water. There's only one of that tool. And if you're going to trade with that child, you have to have something to trade. And then the child who's trying to problem solve is like, well, there's lots of play. there's lots of play that I can trade with. And then Yaya just walks off all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm going to keep going. And then the child who wants the watering can gets upset that he walks away. They try to call the child back, both the teacher and the upset child. But Yaya's like, nope, my play is way more important than this. You can't have it. I'm going. Then they, yeah, it ends with the teacher kind of consoling through with a hug the child who really wanted the watering can.
Yeah.
And then there was some child that I just love. I think that all of a sudden gets in the camera view with a giant white piece of tape or something on their forehead, and I'm like, that's my. There was
Cool.
probably more, but those are the things I cued into.
Yeah. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot
Yeah.
going on there. And I'm going to leave you the links so that you can watch it
Yeah.
again whenever you
And I'm
want.
going to put the
I think
links
I'll give you
into the podcast,
perfect.
the description of the podcast so people can go and watch them as well.
And I'll give you like a couple, I'll just give you one like contextual piece. That those are 3-year-olds. That is their first day at school, like their first day ever at a school,
Oh,
their first day
really?
at that school. It's the first day of building the relationship between that teacher and those children. And those children, that means that those children really haven't had much interaction with other children in
Yeah.
a less family structured setting. And so I
Interesting.
guess what I want to, as you rewatch the video, I'll give you like a little kind of framing or like a prompt, and you can do whatever you want. But think about how what you're seeing there is a form of stepping back. Because I think we're seeing a video of a teacher that is using their language, that is part of what's happening, that is there's like physical contact, there's also like support of that child. But I look at this, and in trainings I've used this as a really interesting way into thinking about how we can both step back but also be very responsive.
Mm,
So, there's paradoxes in a lot of this work.
yeah.
And so I think that, yeah, look at this again, look at this maybe a couple times.
Yeah.
Think about how either what the teacher's saying or doing, how they're really stepping back in that moment. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
want to
I'm
leave it
taking notes because I'm going to put
there.
that in the podcast notes as well, because then other people can answer those same questions for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, like what are we seeing?
Yeah.
And I think they'll probably, well, I'll leave it at that. I think there's some language that will raise some questions that I think are interesting to talk about. That
Mhm.
we don't need to jump in right now, but
If they want to jump in, they need to come to Anji County.
there you go. Or yeah, that's exactly right.
Or check out the Anji Play website.
All right, we're gonna
And
charter the Kristen Day jet. We need to get you a jet. Um,
yes, hey, with the big
yeah,
words like play on the side of it. It should
yeah.
be pink.
Like,
I think it needs
that's
to be
fine.
a pink jet. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put the link to the tour study in
Yeah.
the show notes. I'm also going to put in a link to Anji's website in general if you want to check out any of the resources that they have already on there. If getting to Anji County is not in your cards this June, there's still a lot more that you can learn on the Anji Play website. So dig in and go on this journey with me. I'm really excited. While I'm there, I'm going to be documenting a lot for social media to just kind of give people a peek into just the whole experience. So when that comes, you'll have to follow along. And I'm really thrilled and excited and thankful for this opportunity. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, Jesse. And thank you for being on the podcast again.
Thank you
I
for
can't wait to meet you in
sharing
person.
your space with me. Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
excited. See you in China.
Yeah.
See,
Awesome. All right.
see you.
Thank you.
I'll be right there at the jet bridge when you get off that pink
Okay,
play
good.
jet.
Thank you.
All
The
right.
pink play jet.
Thank you. The
Okay.
pink play jet. I'm there for
I love it. Thank you, Jesse.
you. Thank you so much. That was great.
If you liked what you heard today, share this podcast with your coworkers, admin, or maybe even your partner. And I love getting 5-star reviews so more people can embrace play. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Or connect with me on Instagram or my website, KristenRBPeterson.com. Until next time.